everyone. I'm Sue Peschin, and I serve as President and CEO of the Alliance for Aging Research. We're a national nonprofit organization in Washington, D.C., and our mission is to promote research as a way to enhance the experience of aging and health. And we're so happy to have been invited by the organizers to share the patient perspective today. The good news, I think, is that there's a lot of options for improving participation of older adults in cancer clinical trials. We were very encouraged by the FDA's Oncology Center and really want to praise them for putting out their guidance last year on inclusion of older adults in cancer clinical trials. And we submitted comments to them. The one thing I want to note, and I know everyone listening probably already knows this, but FDA guidances, while I think they're very forward-thinking and terrific, they're not mandates. So they don't really create a level playing field unless every company voluntarily decides to participate. And that's generally unlikely with these guidances. So ultimately, we do think that there needs to be some type of a mandate for a lot of these changes, and I'll go into that in a little bit. But here are just some of the top lines of what we commented on. And a lot of this comes from other organizations that have met and been very forward thinking on this, like ASCO and other groups. So the recruitment strategies that target community oncologists are important, not to just have these trials and these recruitment strategies in big academic centers to make sure that you're getting all communities around the country, and just, putting out as wide a net as possible. Innovative trial designs, in particular, the National Institute on Aging at the NIH has really been promoting the use of adaptive trials when you're interested in including older adults, because that allows for real world settings like in long-term care, and for folks to be able to use remote types of participation. Including the full range of research designs. And I think there's a very instructive guidance that FDA put out that's much broader than just cancer and was just finalized a few months ago in November, called Enhancing the Diversity of Clinical Trial Populations. So we really recommend also that this guidance incorporates some of the research designs identified in that guidance. The collection of geriatric and aging biology data is key in using geriatric assessment tools. A number of cancer specialty societies recommend geriatric assessment, but it remains to be seen how often those are used. And I also want to make the point that just because an oncologist sees a lot of older adults, it doesn't necessarily mean that they have the full experience in geriatrics. So the importance of kind of getting a certificate and some training in geriatrics could go a long way to better uptake of these types of tools. Providing more detail on age subgroups to capture biological age rather than big categories, 65 and up, for example. There's a big difference oftentimes between chronologic age and someone's actual biologic age. So, and everybody knows this. I mean, you could be a 65-year-old that is biologically more like a 50-year-old, or you could be a 65-year-old that's biologically more like an 80-year-old. And so those make a difference in terms of participating in clinical trials. We do think it's important to require the publication of post-market studies on older patients, so that, this knowledge is not just beneficial to the company and the FDA, but to the broader public at large, because that's oftentimes where older adults are included. Making sure that there are specialists in geriatrics and geriatric oncology at the FDA center would be terrific if that's not already happening. And that wasn't clear within the guidance. And then our goal as the Alliance is we would like to see this type of guidance for all medical products that are meant to treat conditions that disproportionately impact older adults. This is terrific. We're praising it. But we also think some of these things really need to be set in stone, so to speak. Another model that could be looked at here, and I hope there are folks that are participating in this summit from this initiative, Marie Bernard, who's the Deputy Director at the National Institute on Aging, is the lead on this. There's an inclusion across the lifespan effort at the National Institutes of Health. This was initiated as part of the 21st Century Cures Act, and it directed the collection of data on inclusion of participants in clinical research studies by age. And that's, again, across the lifespan. So it's to make sure that kids are appropriately included in conditions that impact the pediatric population, and that older adults are included as well. And actually, when you're applying for a grant application, you have to lay out your plan. And if you're excluding based on age, you have to provide a justification for that. They have a scientific review group that assesses applications. And then there's actually a consequence. If you need a revision, you're not going to get funding until the concerns are resolved. And there will be progress reporting required for both the pediatric studies as well as the geriatric. Now, this has just been in place since 2019, so it's relatively new. But I have been serving on the Federal Advisory Council on Aging, and they give pretty regular reports on this, and it's very exciting stuff. So I think it would be good for this group to dive into it a bit more. I think one of the most exciting models that the United States should look to, and we would like to see adoption of this here in the United States, is the European Medicine Agency's geriatric medicine strategy. This has actually started almost 10 years ago at this point, and there was a breakthrough article about it in the New England Journal of Medicine in 2012, and I included a quote here about it. And it's really sort of a two-part strategy. It's to focus on studies that are clinical studies to make sure that you have representative groups of older adults and ways to design those trials so that you're maximizing that participation, and also accounting for things like multiple morbidities, frailty, and also doing geriatric assessments. Those are all part of this. So there's already a model in place. We don't have to reinvent the wheel here. And then the other part of this, which I think is key, and again, would also like to see in the United States, is making sure that older adults understand the information that they're given about medications that are designed for them. So there's a lot of focus here on communication and on folks understanding risk-benefit more so than is currently done in the United States. So we just think this is a great model. This is something the Alliance would love to work with other groups on. We could potentially pursue this in the user fee companion legislation on reauthorization this year, or we could look at it as an independent effort, but really think that we need to go in this direction at this point. Okay, and the last point I want to make today may seem the least obvious, but has the potential to be the most impactful. And that's making sure that you involve older adult patients from the beginning of your research study and get their input. So what does this mean? This involves asking an older adult cancer patient or a family caregiver to serve on your clinical trial review committee, and they can provide input into your original study question, your recruitment, your retention plan, your study design, and even the way you plan to disseminate your research. And you may be thinking to yourself, well, where do you find people like this? Well, there's a terrific place. The Patient-Centered Outcomes Research Institute is an independent organization that was created and is partially funded by Congress, as well as the Medicare program and the insurance industry, that has engagement projects that train patients in patient-centered outcomes research, and then encourages them to get involved as advisors on things like this. So there are PCORI-funded cancer patient engagement projects, and I think that would be a terrific addition to your study. You would be surprised when you get that type of input, when you're coming at this as a younger adult researcher, and by younger, I mean someone even in their 50s or 60s, you may not be thinking about from the perspective of an 80 or 85-year-old who might be super enthusiastic about participating in a clinical study, but may have some sort of different points of view about how many times they're willing to be poked and prodded, what they need in terms of transportation or parking, and even about the original study question, whether or not what you're looking at really matters to them from a patient perspective. So I want to leave you with that. I hope all of you who are from industry will consider including older adult cancer patients or family caregivers on your next clinical trial review committee. Thanks again so much for having me, and I look forward to the dialogue.